The three men in the Bible who never died. Imagine living such a faithful and extraordinary life that God decides to take you directly into His presence, bypassing the natural course of life and death. In the Bible, there are three men who experienced this remarkable fate: Enoch, Elijah, and Melchizedek. Each of these men lived in a way that not only honored God, but demonstrated His divine power over life and death. Their stories offer a unique window into the mysteries of God's sovereignty and how He interacts with humanity. Enoch. Walking with God. The first man on our list is Enoch, one of the most intriguing figures in the Old Testament. Enoch's life is mentioned briefly in Genesis 5:21-24, where we learn that he walked with God, and then he was no more because God took him away. This simple phrase hints at something extraordinary. Enoch did not experience death, but was taken by God. His departure is often described as being translated or taken away, as noted in Hebrews 11:5, where it says that Enoch did not experience death. He could not be found because God had taken him away. This event is unique in the Bible, as it marks the first time God takes someone from earth to heaven without experiencing death. Enoch's life is described as one of walking with God, a life characterized by closeness and obedience. The phrase "walking with God" is a metaphor that reflects a life lived in constant fellowship and communion with God. Enoch's example teaches us that a life of righteousness and intimacy with God has profound consequences. It also shows that God is capable of transcending natural laws, even the inevitability of death. Enoch's story serves as a reminder that, like him, we are called to walk with God. This kind of relationship with the Creator is not just about following rules, but about cultivating an ongoing personal connection with Him. Enoch's unique fate invites believers to aspire to a life of deep devotion, knowing that such a life holds divine rewards beyond what we can imagine. Elijah, the prophet who was taken up in a whirlwind. Next, we come to Elijah, a mighty prophet of God who confronted the wickedness of Israel and called the people to repentance. His life is filled with miraculous events, and his departure from the earth is no less spectacular. In 2 Kings 2:11, we are told that Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind with a chariot and horses of fire. This dramatic departure marks the second time in the Bible that a man does not experience death. Elijah's life was one of passionate obedience to God. He performed miracles, challenged the idolatry of Israel, and stood boldly in the face of adversity. His ascension into heaven was not just a physical departure, but a spiritual victory that symbolized the power of God to transcend the limitations of the physical world. The chariot of fire, often depicted as a symbol of divine power, represented God's glory and His direct intervention in Elijah's life. In the New Testament, Elijah's return is prophesied in the book of Malachi, where it is stated that Elijah will come again before the day of the Lord. Malachi 4:5. Elijah's departure in a whirlwind serves as a foreshadowing of the great events that will unfold in the future. His life and departure are reminders of the power of God's presence and the promises of His ultimate victory over evil. Elijah's story also highlights the power of prophetic ministry. As a prophet, Elijah spoke truth to power, calling the people of Israel to repentance and faithfulness. His life reminds us that God's messengers are sometimes called to deliver difficult messages, but they do so under the divine protection and power of God. Elijah's story encourages us to live boldly for the truth, knowing that God is with us every step of the way. Melchizedek, the mysterious priest king. The final man who never died in the Bible is Melchizedek, a figure whose brief appearance in the Old Testament has captivated theologians and scholars for centuries. Melchizedek is introduced in Genesis 14:18-20, where he is described as the King of Salem and priest of the Most High God. He meets Abraham after Abraham's victory over the kings and blesses him. In return, Abraham gives Melchizedek a tenth of the spoils. What makes Melchizedek so intriguing is not just his role as a priest and king, but the mysterious nature of his genealogy. The Bible does not provide any details about his birth, family, or death, which has led many to conclude that he is a type of Christ. In Hebrews 7:3, the author states that Melchizedek is without father or mother, without genealogy, without beginning of days or end of life. This statement has led to much speculation about his identity. Some believe that Melchizedek is a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ, while others view him as a unique figure who foreshadows the eternal priesthood of Jesus. Melchizedek's role as both a priest and king points to the dual roles that Jesus would later fulfill. The writer of Hebrews uses Melchizedek to explain the superiority of Christ's priesthood. Unlike the Levitical priests who had to offer sacrifices for their own sins, Christ, like Melchizedek, is a perfect high priest who offers himself as the ultimate sacrifice. The fact that Melchizedek's priesthood is described as eternal shows us that Jesus' priesthood is also eternal, not bound by time or death. Melchizedek's brief appearance in the Bible teaches us that sometimes the most significant figures are those who seem the most mysterious. His life points us to the eternal nature of Christ's work and reminds us that God's purposes are often greater than what we can immediately comprehend. The significance of these three men. The stories of Enoch, Elijah, and Melchizedek all share one common theme. They highlight the sovereignty of God over life and death. Each of these men was chosen by God for a special purpose, and each left a lasting legacy. Their lives demonstrate that God's plans are not bound by human limitations. The stories of these three men also show us that obedience, faith, and a deep relationship with God can have eternal consequences. Moreover, these men's stories also teach us about God's mysterious ways. While Enoch, Elijah, and Melchizedek are all unique in their experiences, they each reveal a different facet of God's character. Enoch's life teaches us about walking with God, Elijah's about the power of prophetic ministry, and Melchizedek's about the eternal nature of Christ's priesthood. Together, these stories give us a fuller understanding of God's sovereignty and his plan for redemption. As we reflect on the lives of Enoch, Elijah, and Melchizedek, we are reminded of the profound truth that God's ways are beyond our understanding. These men did not experience death because they lived in such close communion with God that he chose to take them directly into his presence. Their stories challenge us to live lives of deep faith and obedience, trusting that God can do the extraordinary in our lives as well. Enoch, Elijah, and Melchizedek each lived lives that were marked by their relationship with God. They were men of faith, obedience, and holiness. Their stories remind us that though death is a natural part of life, God has the power to transcend even this. Their examples encourage us to pursue a life that honors God and to trust that he has a plan for each of us, one that is greater than we could ever imagine. If you found the stories of Enoch, Elijah, and Melchizedek inspiring and want to explore more fascinating biblical topics, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to activate the notification bell so you can stay updated with all of our new content. We delve into stories, teachings, and life lessons from the Bible that will inspire and deepen your faith. Join us on this journey as we discover more about God's incredible plan for humanity.